You are listening to The Wellness Project. I'm your host, Des, and this is episode number 110. On today's episode, I speak with Adrienne Ticky. Adrienne and I are talking about substance use. Adrienne and her husband, Jim, run a recovery residence community for people just out of treatment for alcohol or drug use. Adrienne is so passionate about helping people overcome their struggles with addiction that she's dedicated her life to it. If you or someone you know struggles with substance use, then you definitely want to listen to this episode. Help me welcome Adrienne. All right, everyone. I am here with Adrienne Ticky. Adrienne, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thanks for having me, Des. I'm so excited.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I'm so glad you're here today because we are talking about a very important topic today. So, would you be so kind as to introduce yourself and let our listeners know what we're going to be talking about today and what it is you do, who you are, that kind of thing?
Sure, I'd be glad to. My name's Adrienne Ticky, and together with my husband, I have created a recovery residence community for people just out of treatment for drugs and alcohol in our hometown of Delray Beach, Florida. At the current time, we have 16 men, and that's down considerably from at our height, we had 60 boys and girls, or I should say men and women. They are all over 18.
Thank you for introducing yourself. Can you get us started with what exactly substance use is? And is there a difference between substance use, substance abuse, and addiction?
Oh, those are great questions. Addiction is defined as a chronic and a relapsing disorder, which is characterized by a compulsive drug use. It's a obsession of the mind and a compulsion of the body, and it continues despite harmful consequences, and it causes long-lasting changes in the brain, we're finding out now, where actually addiction can cause problems in the prefrontal cortex, which is where we make all executive decisions. And so this disease of addiction, where it once was maybe relegated to people on the street or people thinking in their heads like the wino or the homeless man, that's really not what disease of addiction looks like today. It actually looks like your next door neighbor or the boy down the street that's in 8th grade. It's at his school.
Oh, yeah. And a lot of people actually get shocked when I tell them this, but I used to work at a syringe exchange program. That was kind of eye opening for me because we do have those stereotypes about what addiction looks like and the type of people that are addicted to substances. It was a syringe exchange, so, a lot of heroin users, and we had people come in business suits. Somebody came in a postal office uniform.
That's
It
right.
doesn't, yeah, so it doesn't really look like that's stereotypical what we think that it looks like.
Well, and I want to make a good point here. Since COVID-19, I'm afraid that our problem with addiction in this country has only gotten worse. Instantly in 2020, you could get alcohol delivered to your house in all but 4 states overnight. Overnight. One day you went to sleep, the next day you woke up and you could get alcohol delivered to your home. Now, let's be clear, for 90% of the people, they don't have a clinically diagnosable substance use disorder. But for 10% of that population, and it does not discriminate. So it goes from the lowest socioeconomic to the highest, all colors, all religions, it doesn't matter. That's what we found out, that it used to be 10% across the board. And then COVID-19 hit, and addiction and alcoholism and overdose is up 40%
And
worldwide.
and why do you think that is? Are there any common reasons that people seek out to use different substances?
One of the biggest things is that we were all under this huge umbrella of uncertainty, right? People didn't know what their lives were going to be like the next day. So the stress level was increased. You had an increased level of access to substances and particularly alcohol, but drugs were delivered to people's houses as well. There was an airplane pilot that has happened about 6 months ago now, but He actually, the TSA agent smelled the alcohol on his breath and followed him to the plane that he boarded, and he refused to leave the plane. The police had to be called in, and he was drug out because he blew a point .5 the morning after he went out the night before. He was still drunk that morning and too drunk to fly the plane by 4 times.
That's really
Very
scary.
scary. That this has become so normalized in our society that if I watch an episode of Blue Bloods with my husband, Sunday night dinner, they're having wine. If they're having a serious conversation, they're having whiskey. If they're looking for a perp, they're at the bar. It's normalized. That's why I call it accidental addiction, because I don't think anybody started out when they were laid off work or had to work from home and started getting alcohol delivered. They never thought that they would get addicted. I'm just having a glass of wine at the end of the day to wind down, right? I'm just having a couple of glasses of beer so I can sleep tonight. And that was insidiously turned into addiction for some people.
I
And
like
there is
that.
a difference between addiction and abuse. Some people can play with substances and not fall across that line of addiction. Obviously, I would be a millionaire if I knew what that line was, and that we could pinpoint that line in every person we come across.
Right. Yeah, it's really tough. And like you said, it's so normalized. Even in one of my favorite shows, Supernatural, which is a show geared towards teenagers, one of the main characters drinks a lot in the show, constantly pounding beers. And it's never viewed as, being a social worker, I'm like, oh, he has a substance use issue here. But it's never addressed in the show as substance abuse.
Right, it's not. And it's normalized, right? So that you don't think of saying anything. That's why this pilot, you know what the first words were, when the TS agent told that guy that he couldn't drive the plane. The co-pilot looked at the TSA agent before the cop got there to bring him off the plane and said, "It doesn't matter, I'll drive." So do you see how many yes men that alcoholics are surrounded with in positions of authority? They have people enabling them, and it's very easy to enable because, like we just talked about, it's normal in our society. It's cultural. I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but I have a divided pancreas and I can't drink. Now, when people find out that I'm sick and that's why I can't drink, they're fine. But until that time, it's a battle.
Yes, I have experienced that because I don't drink either. I'll have like a hard cider here and there, or if I'm out with friends or whatever, like a few sips of a glass of wine here and there, but I really don't drink. It has become very awkward and uncomfortable. And actually, one of my friends, she was in recovery and she found it easier at parties. She said she would pretend to drink than have to explain herself because she said people would harass her. Here, have a drink, have a drink, have a drink. She would always hold a cup with her with like Sprite and like a lime on it or something. When
That's
people,
exactly right. That's
yes,
one of the things that we tell people all the time. Get a drink, put a Coke and a lime. It looks like a Cuba Libre. Nobody's going to ask you if you're drinking or not if you have a cup in your hand. But if you have a Coke, they're like relentless. Come on, you can drink one. It's not. And I have to explain to people once I say, like, if I drink, I can go to the hospital. I'm not willing to do that for anybody, all y'all, but there is this social pressure, isn't there, to fit in.
a lot of social pressure. And it's strange. It's odd to me that somebody would be almost upset that somebody else isn't drinking.
Almost upset. Yeah. And or is it that we make them feel weird about how much they're drinking?
Yes, because even if somebody is drinking, it's like, why aren't you drinking more? Have one more, have another one.
Or like bringing rounds of shot to say that somebody just bought you a shot and go, well, it's for somebody else because I can't drink it.
Yeah, it becomes very awkward in those social situations. So I like how you brought that up. You say accidental addiction. I like that phrase because, like you said, nobody seeks out being addicted to substances. It just happens, and it could happen to any of us.
It could happen to any of us. And I think that that's really the point that I want to get across, and why I think that this is good that we're finally talking about this openly, is that I cannot emphasize enough that the picture in people's minds of an addict and an alcoholic needs to change. It's your grandmother now because she's gotten prescription for pain pills when she's already not very steady on her feet. How do you think that's going to end? So
Oh,
we've now got elderly people going into treatment because they've listened to the doctor and they used that amount of medication that was narcotic medication. They either fell, they aren't steady on their feet anyway. You want to give them something that's going to make them even more wobbly, you know. This all really, truth be told, started with the OxyContin situation back in the 2006, 7, 8, 9 range. And when the pill mills shut down, people went to heroin. And now the fentanyl, they're going to the fentanyl and it's killing them.
oh yeah, it's super deadly. And I don't know if you heard this, but everyone, at the time of this recording today, it's November 5th, a celebrity, Aaron Carter, passed away, and he's battled addiction for years, and it's suspected that he did die of substances. He was found, I guess, dead in his bathtub. He drowned, but it is suspected, they haven't released it yet because they just have found his body, but it's suspected he died of drugs.
And you know what else, too, is, something that you talk about on your podcast a lot is mental health. This is such a big issue. We are so behind in our mental health care, and so many people have co-occurring mental health issues as well as addiction.
We are in a complete mental health crisis in this
Absolutely.
country. And not only this country, other countries as well, but I know other countries are more equipped, have more services, but it's so hard in this country to get services. I mean, we have students, I work in a middle school and high school. We have students that have suicidal ideation. They're self harming. When I worked at the mental health clinic, we had teenagers that were attempting suicide and we had nowhere to send them. There's nowhere
That's right.
to help. There's nowhere to send people to get help. We're in a complete mental health crisis. But I'm glad you brought that up. Are there any common dual diagnoses that you're seeing?
Depression for sure. In fact, we have a meeting here in town that's called Depression in the Alcoholic. As I said, there's prefrontal cortex damage that is sometimes long term. We do see a lot of bipolar and schizoaffective. We deal with people in our recovery residences that have primary mental health, secondary addiction, which hardly anybody does because they all want it primary addiction, secondary mental health. But it can go both ways. You can have primary addiction and then you can develop mental illnesses as a result, or you can have a co-occurring addiction and bipolar. I know people that are bipolar. They're not just bipolar on Tuesday at 6 o'clock. They have a real need. Unfortunately, I just can't apologize enough for the mental health portion of our industry. They don't have good answers. It's like, here, take this medication and wait 3 weeks, wait 6 weeks, see if it helps you. In the meantime, I hope you don't kill yourself. Oh, and by the way, that can be one of the side effects of the drugs I'm giving you too. So good luck.
Oh, yes. We have a very, very long way to go. And I know that PTSD trauma experiences are very strongly linked to substance abuse as well.
Absolutely, because they're tied to these adverse childhood experiences that you had when you were younger. Those create traumas that, if not addressed, will cause issues later on. And addiction is one of those issues that could be caused. Mental illness is another.
Yes, definitely. I know we talked about that it's hard to get help for people for their mental health and addictions, but there are recovery residences. For our listeners, can you explain exactly what that is and what it looks like?
Oh, sure. So when you go to treatment, it's usually either a 28-day inpatient treatment, or now they've come out with something called detox residential, which is about 2 weeks, depending on what insurance you have. That's going to tell you whether you're going to get 2 weeks in treatment or a month in treatment. After treatment, a lot of people know about rehabs, but I don't think very many people know what goes on in rehabs. So in rehab, it's just to get you medically stabilized, off of the drugs, weaned off of the drugs in a safe medical environment, and then teach you some things about your addiction, about family roles, and about how you can go and live your life as a newly sober person, and where you can find passion and purpose in your life again. The barometer seems to be that people need to make it to that year mark. If they can make it to a year sober, they have an 85% chance of making it long term. So if somebody can come to one of our recovery residences, which is like a group home, you get to do real life, but with a safety net, right? We're here to protect you and help you all along the way for you to make new choices in your life with a little bit of protection, a little bit of training wheels. And you learn how to be a responsible, productive citizen again. You know, we walk in the bank with you and open up a checking account. We go into the job and go with you to ask for the application. We teach you, you have to look at somebody in the eye if you want them to consider you for a job. All these personal skills that because they had been living so long in a lie of addiction, they've forgotten how to just have these basic human interactions. We give hope.
Oh, absolutely. And that is so needed. So, your recovery residence community, is that for people that are just out of treatment? Is that right?
That's correct. About 95% of our clientele come directly bed to bed from treatment. And the other 5% are found either online or their alumni that come back. We've had several alumni come back multiple times. You know, sometimes addiction in our world, it's a step forward and 4 steps back. But then, you know, a couple of days later, you'll jump ahead 5.
It just infuriates me that the length of time somebody is in treatment depends upon the insurance. They decide how long you're in treatment. That makes no
Yes,
sense to
ma'am.
me. It makes me so angry.
It
So,
is
oh,
so insidious that they put the treatment and addiction treatment specifically is in the medical model because it's in the medical model, it is available for the same scams that other ones in the medical model. It seems like it's a never ending cycle. Okay, so you go to rehab and then you come out and you relapse and you go back to rehab and you relapse and you go back to rehab. Well, we're telling people we have another approach. We take people that have been to several rehabs. You don't learn anything new. It's like going to the 12th grade 15 times. Why would you do that? You know, it's not
right.
working the way that people said it should work 50 years ago. I mean, addiction is not new, right? Since there's been substances and, you know, potions that you can make with roots and bark and whatever, people have done something to alter their mood or mind. But now it's more dangerous. I mean, the first time a quarter of a pill can kill you, you'll do the self care and the personal development and the mental health will look after those. And I think that our world will be a better place for it.
Oh, definitely. I agree. And so, why do you think that your community has been so successful in helping people manage their own lives?
I think that's a great question. I think it's because between my husband and I, we're the tough love that they needed. He's the tough, I'm the love. I put safety and welcome and my heart into all of our homes as I was decorating them. You know, I tell people now, we've been waiting for you for 14 years. Come and experience what it's like on the other side, not somebody that's going to be wanting to take advantage of you, not somebody that just wants to see your demise, but somebody who wants to hold your hand and walk with you every step of the way to get to that magic year point, you know, to know that you can grow up. Nobody wants to grow up completely, but there are a lot of rewards in addition to the responsibilities. That's where you start getting self-esteem, which some people that come to us, they've got trauma and they've never had self-esteem in their life. They are treating their bodies so badly because they think that way of themselves. That's why we've got to turn that around. There's a love letter from addiction. It circulates in our circles from time to time. It says, "Dear friend, I have come to visit once again. I like to see you suffer mentally, physically, spiritually, and socially. I want to make you restless so you can never relax. I want to make you jumpy, nervous, and anxious. I want to make you agitated and irritable. So everything and everybody makes you uncomfortable. More important, the ones you turned yourself against because of your inexcusable actions. I am eternally grateful, especially for the loved ones, family, and the more important people in the world that you have turned against yourself. You even threw away those from me. But don't despair, my friend, for on me you can always depend. After you've lost all these things, you can still depend on me to take even more. You can depend on me to keep living in hell, mind, body, and soul. For I will not be satisfied until you're dead. Forever yours, your addiction.
That's really insightful for people.
And like you said, we've talked about already, nobody wakes up and says, what I wanted to be when I grow up is someone that is trapped, mind, body, and spirit.
Oh, definitely not. So there are these options. There are, these recovery residences. There's different, sober houses, halfway houses, treatment facilities. There's your community. But what do you say to people that aren't able to access these kind of services?
The thing to note is why they're, to try to figure out why they're not accessible. If it's cost, we can look at that. There are anywhere from the government facility that, you get a pillow and a blanket to these rehab centers that have equine horses, they have that therapy, they have a spa every day and gourmet food. So you're going from the low end of the spectrum to the high end of the spectrum. But keeping in mind, all of these places teach the exact same curriculum. So it's important to get yourself into a program. The second thing I would suggest is really get yourself a stellar support system. Tell lots of somebodies, look, I'm really trying to give up drinking because I can't take the sugar anymore. Tell as many people as you can to hold you accountable. That's usually where people fall in recovery, is they sequester themselves and they isolate. I think it was Gabor Mate that said the absence of addiction is not abstinence, it's connection.
Oh, I love that.
They're disconnected from themselves. How can they be connected to you if they don't even know who they are? And it really is that petrifying for some people to face life on its own terms. So that's why we continue doing the work that we're doing, because if somebody comes to us and says, please help me, I don't want to drink, but I can't stop, I don't know how. We just, open our arms and say, okay, let's get to work. We're not going to sugarcoat anything. We are going to make you do some things that are uncomfortable. I know that our country is stronger than this. I know that we are going to rally up. And when we can see this problem for what it is, because, overdoses have now eclipsed COVID deaths, overdoses for fentanyl.
It's a lot. And like you said, it's everywhere. It's our friend, it's our neighbor, it's our child, our parent.
That's why I believe it takes a village to raise a child, because we all have a part we can play in this, in the recovery, not the relapse. What do we know that relapse is part of recovery? Yes, it can be. But my husband took one white chip almost 3 years ago, and he hasn't looked back. So it's possible. And just giving people that hope. And the other thing that makes us different, we involve the whole family, because the whole family has to heal.
Oh, I love that. That's so true. You bring up a great point. Addiction affects the entire family.
Yes, it's how can it not, right? Because who wants to be walking on eggshells, afraid of everything that somebody says or what you say? Or
So, what does that look like involving the family?
so we have a Zoom call that we do once a month. It's called Lodge Family Group. We have consistently about 12 to 13 families that jump on. It usually means both parents. It doesn't always mean both parents, or you know what I mean, parents and step parents. But there's usually the mother and the father figures are both in attendance. And we talk about things like grief, you having to grieve the loss of your child before your child dies, because you know that they're putting themselves in that much of harm's way that you're preparing yourself for the inevitable. The sister that doesn't ever get the mom and dad's attention because they're always focusing on the person with the problem. So she starts acting out just to get some attention. You don't have to look very far, unfortunately, especially with, I hate to say it, but a lot of the people that we've had that have money, and I'm talking about a lot of money, it's generational. And we really, really need to start breaking the cycle. You don't have to be your parents. So that's where we need to get people with addiction and into recovery, where they are feeling better and better and better about themselves every day. I mean, most of them are very eclectic. They're geniuses. They just want to be their unique self. And they feel like the world hasn't got time for them or isn't ready for them. And we teach them that they make their own way. You make your own way. You want to fly, you'll fly.
Oh, well, Adrienne, the work you're doing is so important. It's so powerful. Thank you so much for being here today to share the work that you're doing, to let everyone know about the work you're doing and the seriousness of this issue and the things that we can do to help. Do you have any resources at all that you could share with our listeners if they themselves are struggling with substance use or a loved one that they know of?
Sure. I think the best thing for them to do is go on to the SAMHSA webpage, SAMHS as in Sam, A.gov. And they have just a ton of resources. The other thing that I can tell you is you can go to AA.org and find an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, or there's also NA.org, which is Narcotics Anonymous meetings. Get to a meeting, get to a support group, get to people that can help you.
Oh, great. And everyone, I'm going to put all those links in the show notes. And Adrienne, can you share where everybody can find you?
I'm sure you can find us at www.thelodgedelray.com. And you can personally email me at adrienne@recoverycomeshome.com.
Adrienne, thank you so much for being here today and sharing all of this. It's so important to have this conversation. Do you have any last words of wisdom or advice?
Well, I just want to say that, if you or someone you love is struggling today, just know that there are people out there that can help. There are people that have been in the situation that you're in and have gotten out of it. As long as there's breath, there's hope.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much for being here today, Adrienne.
Thank you, Des. I've really, really enjoyed talking to you.
Adrienne, thank you so much for being here today. This is such an important topic and one that sadly resonates with a lot of people. If you or someone you know struggles with substance use or addiction, please know that there is help out there for you. All the resources that Adrienne has mentioned are in the show notes, so definitely check those out. It's a place to start. If you got a lot out of this episode, I think you'll also get a lot out of episode number 76 and episode number 80. I interviewed two women that share their story of how they overcame their own struggles with addiction. They are both really inspiring episodes and give so much hope to those that are struggling with addiction. So if you got something out of this episode, then you will definitely get something out of episode number 76, where I interviewed Beth Gatlin, and episode number 80, where I interviewed Amanda Acker. I'm going to put those links in the show notes. Make sure you go check them out. If you gain a lot of value from my podcast, I would so greatly appreciate you leaving me a review on iTunes or leaving 5 stars on Spotify or doing both. Positive reviews really help to spread word about the podcast and get it out there to more listeners. So help me spread the message. You can also do that by sharing this episode or your favorite episode on social media and tagging me at The Wellness Project with Des. I encourage you to become a part of my Facebook community. I'm in there every day with mental health and wellness content. It's at facebook.com/groups/according to Des, as well as getting on my email list. You will be the first to hear about new episodes, new blog posts, new products, new workshops, and it's a great way to stay connected with me. I'll have those links in the show notes, and I can't wait to connect with you there. Next week is my very last interview of season 3. I'll be speaking with Erin Wall. I will be having one more episode after Erin's episode, but Erin is my last interview of season 3, so make sure you check that out. I hope you have a great week. I will see you next week with another amazing interview. Talk to you then.